What's wrong with your face? Who did this to you? Fell. The lie hung in the air like smoke, bitter and transparent. Jin Park's hand tightened around his coffee cup as he stood in the doorway of his penthouse kitchen at 6 a.m. The morning light streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows illuminated everything he wished he hadn't seen. Clara stood at the marble counter, her back rigid, arranging his breakfast with movements that were too careful, too measured. Her usual fluid grace had been replaced by something that made his chest tighten with a feeling he couldn't quite name. Welcome to Afrokorean Stories. If this is pulling you in, hit that subscribe button right now because what comes next will change everything you thought you knew about love and loyalty. At 36, Jin had built an empire that stretched from Seoul to New York. Tech companies, real estate ventures, investments that made financial analysts dizzy with envy. He'd learned early that showing emotion was a weakness, that control was everything. His charcoal suit was immaculate, his expression unreadable, his world perfectly ordered. But something was wrong this morning, and Jin Park didn't ignore problems. Clara, turn around. His voice cut through the silence, sharp and commanding in a way that made his board members sweat during meetings. She flinched. That small movement sent alarm bells ringing through his mind. In the year she'd worked for him, managing his household with quiet efficiency, he'd never seen her react that way. Good morning, Mr. Park. Her voice was steady, but there was something underneath it, something strained. I've prepared your usual breakfast. The market had fresh berries this morning. I didn't ask about breakfast. I asked you to turn around. Jin set down his coffee cup with deliberate care and crossed the kitchen in 4 long strides. He moved into her line of sight before she could stop him, and what he saw made his blood run cold. A dark bruise bloomed across her left cheekbone, purple and angry against her rich brown skin. Her lower lip was split on one side, and when she finally met his gaze with those deep brown eyes that had always held quiet strength, he saw something that twisted his stomach into knots. Fear. Raw, visceral fear. What happened? His voice came out harder than he intended, and she stepped back instinctively, her shoulder blade hitting the cabinet behind her. Told you. Fell. Last night. The stairs in my building are poorly lit, and I missed a step. It's nothing really. She turned back to the counter, but her hands were shaking so badly that the knife she'd been using to slice strawberries clattered against the cutting board. Jin had negotiated billion-dollar deals. He'd stared down corporate sharks who'd tried to destroy him. He knew a lie when he heard one, could read body language like some people read books. But this wasn't business. This was Clara, the woman who hummed old jazz standards while she worked, who left handwritten grocery lists with little sketches in the margins, who somehow made his sterile penthouse feel less like a showroom and more like a home. Look at me. It wasn't a request, and they both knew it. Clara's shoulders rose and fell with a breath that sounded more like surrender. Slowly she turned, and Jin saw the full extent of what she'd been hiding. The bruise extended down to her jaw. There were finger-shaped marks on her neck, partially concealed by the collar of her white blouse. And the way she held her right arm close to her body told him there was more damage he couldn't see. Everyone out. Jin's voice was quiet, deadly quiet. The kind of quiet that preceded storms. His security team, positioned discreetly throughout the penthouse, moved immediately. They knew that tone. Within seconds, the heavy doors clicked shut, leaving them alone in the vast space. Mr. Park, please. I need this position. I promise it won't interfere with my work. I'll do better with the concealer next time. Clara stopped mid-sentence as Jin took a step closer. His dark eyes locked on hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. It is, you. Each word was precise, controlled, but underneath was something dangerous, something that made the air feel electric. Clara's composure cracked. Her hand flew to her mouth, but she couldn't stop the sob that escaped. Tears began to stream down her face, and she turned away, wrapping her arms around herself as if she could hold the pieces together through sheer will. It doesn't matter. Please, I just need to work. Can't lose this job. Can't. Her voice broke on the last word, and something in Jin's chest broke with it. Matters to me. The words came out fierce, possessive, and they surprised him as much as they seemed to surprise her. Clara turned back to face him, her eyes wide with shock and confusion. Why would it matter to you? I'm just your housekeeper. I'm nobody. Not nobody. Jin's jaw clenched so hard it hurt. Not to me. Now tell me who did this, Clara. Tell me, or I'll find out myself, and you won't like how I go about it. The dam broke completely. Clara's legs seemed to give out, and she slid down the cabinet to sit on the kitchen floor, her face in her hands. Jin moved without thinking, crouching down in front of her, close enough to offer support but far enough to give her space. His name is Terrence. Her voice was muffled behind her hands. We've been together for 3 years. He wasn't always like this. I swear he wasn't. When my parents passed away and left me with nothing, when I was struggling to survive in the city, he helped me. He gave me a place to stay. He paid my bills. He made me feel safe. She lowered her hands, and Jin saw raw anguish in her expression. But then things changed. He started questioning where I was every minute, who I talked to, what I spent money on. He said it was because he loved me, because he was taking care of me. I thought maybe I was being ungrateful, you know? Maybe I owed him my loyalty because he'd helped me when I had nothing. You don't owe anyone the right to hurt you. Jin's voice was low, controlled, but his hands had curled into fists at his sides. Last night I told him you were giving me a raise, that you appreciated my work and wanted to increase my salary. She laughed, but it was a broken sound. He said I was probably sleeping with you to get it. That Korean men like you only keep African women around for one reason. When I defended myself, when I told him it wasn't like that you'd been nothing but professional, he said I was calling him a liar. Jin's entire body went rigid, every muscle tensing with barely controlled rage. He hit me so hard I saw stars. Then he grabbed me by the throat and told me if I ever disrespected him again, if I ever left him or told anyone what happens at home, he'd make sure I disappeared, that nobody would even look for someone like me. Clara's voice dropped to a whisper. I believe him, Mr. Park. Terrence knows people. Bad people. And I'm just a woman with no family, no connections, working a job most people don't even notice. If I vanished, who would even care? I would care. Jin's voice came out rough, almost violent in its intensity. I would tear this city apart looking for you. Do you understand me, Clara? I would burn it all down. She stared at him, lips parted in shock, tears still streaming down her face. If you haven't subscribed yet, please hit that subscribe button now because this story is about to take a turn you won't want to miss. Jin pulled out his phone and dialed without breaking eye contact with Clara. Sang-min, I need a protective detail. 2 of our best. Discreet. He paused, listening. No, not for me. For someone who matters. He glanced at Clara, who whispered an address with a trembling voice. Send them to watch a woman named Rosa Davis, Clara's neighbor, and make sure no one approaches without clearance. Indefinitely. Yes, now. Mr. Park, you don't have to do this. I can't ask you to. Clara's protest died when Jin raised a hand. You're not asking. I'm telling. Now give me Terrence's full name and address, or I'll have my people find it. But that will take time I don't want to waste. Every second he walks free is a second too long. Clara's eyes searched his face, looking for something. What are you going to do? What I should have done the moment I saw those bruises. Make sure he never touches you again. Jin's voice was ice and steel. His name. She told him everything. Terrence Williams lived in a neighborhood where people learned young that survival meant minding your business. He worked as a foreman at a construction site, managed underground card games on weekends, and had a reputation for being charming in public and vicious in private. He had friends in low places, the kind who could make problems disappear for the right price. When Jin and 3 of his men arrived at Terrence's apartment building at 9 p.m. that evening, they could hear music pulsing through the walls. Jin knocked once, twice, then a 3rd time hard enough that the sound echoed through the hallway. The door swung open, and Terrence stood there in a tank top and jeans, a beer in one hand, gold chains glinting around his neck. He was tall, muscular, with the kind of build that came from manual labor and gym sessions designed to intimidate. His eyes swept over Jin with barely concealed contempt. "Yeah, what do you want?" Terrence's voice was rough, dismissive. Jin smiled. It was the smile he used in boardrooms before he destroyed someone's career. "Terrence Williams. We need to have a conversation about Clara." Terrence's expression shifted from irritation to recognition. He'd never met Jin Park in person, but everyone in this city knew the face of the man who owned half of it. His bravado faltered for just a second before he tried to puff up his chest again. "Man, look, I don't know what she told you, but that's between me and my girl. You rich types don't know nothing about our business. Why don't you go back to your fancy office and leave real people alone?" One of Jin's men, a mountain of a man named Jay, shifted his weight slightly, and Terrence's eyes flicked to him nervously. "Real people." Jin's voice was conversational, almost pleasant, which made it more terrifying. "Is that what you call someone you put your hands on? Someone you threaten and brutalize? Tell me, Terrence, does hitting women make you feel like a real man?" Terrence's face flushed with anger. "She's dramatic, all right. She probably walked into a door and is making it into this big thing to get attention from some rich Korean dude who feels sorry for her. That's what women like her do, they play victim." Jin's hand shot out faster than Terrence could process, gripping the front of his tank top and slamming him against the door frame so hard the entire frame shook. The beer bottle fell from Terrence's hand and shattered on the concrete floor, the sound sharp and violent. "Let me be absolutely clear." Jin's voice dropped to barely above a whisper, his face inches from Terrence's. "You will never speak to Clara again. You will never go near her. You will never even think about her. If I hear you've driven down her street, if I hear you've asked about her, if I hear you've so much as breathed her name, what happens next will be the last thing you ever experience. Do we have an understanding?" Terrence tried to maintain his tough guy persona, but fear was creeping into his eyes. "You can't just threaten people, man. Got rights. I'll call the cops. I'll tell them you came here," and Jin's grip tightened, cutting off his words. "Please do call them. I'm sure they'd be very interested in those underground card games you run. Or maybe the stolen construction materials you've been selling. Or perhaps the outstanding warrant for assault in New Jersey you've been avoiding for 2 years. Jin's smile widened. "I did my research, Terrence. In the 3 hours since Clara told me your name, I learned everything about you. Your debt, your criminal record, the restraining order your ex-girlfriend filed. Should I continue?" Terrence's tough guy mask crumbled completely. All right. I'll stay away from her. She's not worth this trouble anyway." Jin's eyes went cold, dead cold, and he leaned in even closer. "If you ever speak about her like that again, if you ever imply she's anything less than valuable, I won't have conversations. I won't send warnings. I'll erase you so completely that people will forget you ever existed. Your friends won't find your body. Your family won't get closure. You'll simply cease to be. Do you understand me, Terrence?" Terrence nodded frantically, his breath coming in short gasps. Jin released him and stepped back, smoothing his jacket with practiced ease as if he'd just finished a pleasant business meeting. "Enjoy your evening." 3 hours later, Jin stood outside Clara's apartment building. It was a modest place in a neighborhood that had seen better days, but it was clean, and there were flowers in some of the windows. He'd texted her that he was coming, not wanting to frighten her by showing up unannounced. She opened the door before he could knock. She changed into comfortable clothes, soft pants and an oversized sweater that made her look younger, more vulnerable. Her face was freshly washed, no makeup to hide the injuries, and they looked worse in the harsh apartment lighting. "Did you?" Her voice was small, hopeful, terrified all at once. "He won't bother you again. I made absolutely certain of it." Jin's voice was gentle now, a stark contrast to the lethal coldness it had held hours earlier. Clara's hand flew to her mouth, and tears began streaming down her face again. These were different tears, though. These carried relief, release, the beginning of healing. God. Thank God. I was so scared. I've been so scared for so long. Jin wanted to reach for her, to pull her into his arms and promise her she'd never have to be scared again, but he held back, respecting her space. We need to talk about your living situation. This building doesn't have proper security. The locks on your door are inadequate. I have a property about 15 minutes from here. 2 bedrooms, gated community, 24-hour security, updated safety systems. It's currently vacant. You should move there. Mr. Park, I appreciate everything you've done, but I can't accept that. I could never afford something like that, and I won't be a charity case. Have my pride. Then consider it a housing benefit. Part of your employment package. Jin's expression didn't change, but there was warmth in his eyes. Clara laughed through her tears, the sound like music after a long silence. You're completely making that up right now, aren't you? Completely. But you're going to accept it anyway because you're smart enough to know it's the right choice. You deserve to feel safe, Clara. Let me give you that. Before she could respond, a voice called out from inside the apartment. Auntie Clara. Who's at the door? A girl appeared, maybe 10 years old, with bright eyes and hair pulled back in neat braids. She wore pajamas covered in stars and carried a worn book under her arm. She looked at Jin with open curiosity rather than fear. Mr. Park, this is Ayana. She's my niece. My brother's daughter. She stays with me while he's deployed overseas. Clara's hand rested protectively on the girl's shoulder. Mr. Park, this is Ayana. She's my niece. My brother's daughter. She stays with me while he's deployed overseas. Clara's hand rested protectively on the girl's shoulder. You're really tall. Ayana observed matter-of-factly. Jin found himself crouching down to her level, something he'd never done for anyone. That's a very astute observation. What's that big word mean? Means you notice things accurately. That's an excellent quality to have. Ayana's face lit up. Are you the reason those men were outside my school today? My teacher said they were special security guards making sure everyone was safe. Jin glanced up at Clara, who was watching them with an expression that made his heart do something strange in his chest. I wanted to make sure you and your Aunt Clara are always protected. Like a superhero. Ayana asked, her eyes wide. Something like that, though I think real heroes are the people who keep going even when things are hard. People like your Aunt Clara. Ayana considered this seriously, then nodded as if he'd passed some invisible test. Bae, you can stay for dinner if you want. We're having jollof rice and chicken. Auntie makes the best jollof rice in the whole world. And that's how Jin Park, a man who'd built an empire on calculated decisions and emotional distance, found himself sitting at a small kitchen table eating jollof rice while a 10-year-old told him about her book report on Harriet Tubman. The rice was indeed the best he'd ever tasted, and the warmth in that small apartment was worth more than any of his properties. The next month unfolded like a dream Clara wasn't sure she deserved. She and Ayana moved into the apartment Jin had offered. It was in a neighborhood with tree-lined streets, good schools, and a park where Ayana could play without Clara's heart stopping every time she was out of sight. For the first time in years, Clara slept through the night without jerking awake at every sound. She still managed Jin's household, but things were different now. He'd discovered she had a degree in business management she'd never been able to use. My parents spent everything they had to send me to college, she'd told him one evening. Then they died in a car accident 6 months after I graduated, and the medical bills and funeral costs ate through everything. I couldn't find work in my field without experience, and I couldn't get experience without work, so I cleaned houses to survive. Jin had listened with an intensity that made her feel like every word mattered. The next day, he'd offered her a position managing his personal investments and real estate portfolio. 3 times her previous salary. You're giving me this because you feel sorry for me, Clara had protested, even as her heart soared at the opportunity. I'm giving you this because I've watched you organize my household for a year with more efficiency than my 6-figure executives show in my companies. I've seen the spreadsheets you create, the way you negotiate with vendors, how you manage budgets. You're wasted as a housekeeper, Clara. Let me see what you can really do. His eyes had held a challenge, And Clara had never been one to back down from a challenge. She'd accepted, and within weeks, she'd proven him right. She reorganized his property management systems, identified investments that were bleeding money, and brought a perspective his all-male, mostly Korean team had been missing. Even his most skeptical executives had to admit she was brilliant. One evening, Jin found Clara in his study long after everyone else had gone home. She was staring at a photograph on his desk, one he usually kept face down. "You're still here," he said from the doorway. He turned, startled. "I could say the same to you. I thought you had that dinner meeting with the soul investors. Cancelled it. I realized I'd rather be here." He moved into the room, drawn to her like gravity. Clara gestured to the photograph. "Your family." Jin picked up the frame. A young Korean woman smiled shyly at the camera, her eyes kind and sad at the same time. "My mother. She died when I was 13. Clara touched his arm gently. "Jin, I'm so sorry. My father was a businessman. Powerful, respected, feared. Everyone thought he was brilliant. What they didn't know was that he came home and took out every frustration, every perceived slight, every business failure on her. He drank, and when he drank, he became a monster." Jin's voice was flat, emotionless, but Clara could see the pain beneath it. "Did anyone know? Did she tell anyone?" She tried. Once she went to her family. They told her to be a better wife, that she must have done something to anger him. Another time she called the police. My father paid them off and beat her worse for embarrassing him. So she stayed, thinking she was protecting me. Thinking if she just endured it, he'd leave me alone. Jin's hands tightened on the frame. She was wrong. One night, he came home drunk after a bad business deal. He started hitting her, and I tried to stop him. I was 13, small for my age, no match for him. He threw me across the room, and when I woke up, she was dead. He'd beaten her so badly that she died while I was unconscious. Clara's hand flew to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Jin, my God. He made it look like a home invasion. Paid the right people, told the right story. He had the power and connections to make it disappear. I had to stand at her funeral and watch him play the grieving husband while I knew the truth. Jin finally looked at Clara, and his eyes were haunted. "When I saw you that morning with bruises on your face, all I could see was her. All those times she tried to hide the injuries, the lies about falling or walking into doors. I swore at her grave that I would never let another woman suffer like that if I had the power to stop it." Clara stepped closer, taking the photograph from his hands and setting it down gently. "Your mother would be proud of the man you became." "Would she?" "I've done terrible things, Clara. Built an empire on ruthless decisions. Destroyed careers. Ruined people who got in my way. I'm not a good man. You protected a stranger and her niece when you didn't have to. You gave us safety when we had none. You could have just fired me and moved on, but you didn't. That's what your mother would see." Clara's hand found his, their fingers intertwining naturally. "That's what I see." They stood there in the lamplight of the study, the city glittering through the windows behind them, two people who'd survived darkness understanding that they'd found light in each other. "I'm falling for you." Jin's voice was quiet, vulnerable in a way she'd never heard. "I shouldn't be. You work for me. You're healing from trauma. The timing is catastrophically bad. But I can't seem to stop it, and I'm not sure I want to." Clara's breath caught. "Feel it too. You terrify me, but not the way Terrence did. You terrify me because I want to trust you, because I want to believe this is real, and trust has only destroyed me before." Jin turned to face her fully, his free hand coming up to cup her cheek with infinite gentleness, careful of the fading bruises. "Then let's be terrified together. Let's build something neither of us thought we could have." When he kissed her, it was soft, questioning, giving her every opportunity to pull away. Instead, Clara melted into him, her hands gripping his shirt as if he might disappear like smoke. The kiss deepened, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, Clara felt safe. Truly, completely safe. But safety in Jin Park's world was never guaranteed. 6 weeks after that first kiss, After Clara had started to believe happiness might actually last, Terrence resurfaced. He'd been drinking for hours at a bar on the east side, working up courage and rage in equal measure. His friends had been mocking him, calling him soft, saying he'd let some rich Korean take his woman and hadn't done anything about it. His pride, already wounded, couldn't take any more humiliation. He'd done his research too. Knew where Ayana went to school. Knew Clara picked her up every Tuesday and Thursday. Knew that on those days there was a small window of opportunity if he was smart about it. He'd recruited 2 of his construction buddies, guys who owed him favors and didn't ask questions. The plan was simple. Grab the kid from the school parking lot, use her as leverage to force Clara to come back. Once Clara was under his control again, he'd make sure she never even thought about leaving. They never got close. Jin's security team spotted them the moment their car entered the street near Ayana's school. Within 90 seconds, Terrence and his friends were surrounded, their vehicle boxed in by 2 black SUVs. Ayana was whisked into the school building by armed guards who materialized from nowhere. And Jin received a phone call that made his vision go red. He found Clara at the school 20 minutes later, sitting in the principal's office with Ayana in her lap. Both of them were surrounded by his security team, safe but shaken. Clara's face was pale, her eyes wide with shock and residual terror. Ayana was crying quietly into her aunt's shoulder. He tried to take her. Clara's voice was barely a whisper when she saw Jin. He actually tried to kidnap Ayana. My sweet girl who's never hurt anyone. He was going to take her. Jin knelt in front of them, his usual composure cracking around the edges. Is safe. You're both safe. I give you my word that this ends tonight. No more threats. No more fear. Ends. Where is he? Clara's eyes searched his face. Being held until I decide what to do with him. Jin's jaw clenched. And what I want to do might get me arrested. Clara grabbed his arm, her grip surprisingly strong. Don't kill him. Please, Jin. I don't want his blood on your hands because of me. I don't want you to become something you're not. He tried to kidnap your niece, Clara. He was going to use a child as leverage. People like him don't stop unless they're stopped permanently. No. And there are other ways. Legal ways. Clara's voice gained strength. You have connections with lawyers, prosecutors, judges. You can make sure he goes to prison for a long time, not just a slap on the wrist. You can make sure he's held accountable without destroying who you are in the process. Jin stared at her, seeing the strength beneath the fear, the woman who'd survived abuse and come out the other side with her moral compass intact. You're asking me to be better than my instincts. I'm asking you to be the man your mother hoped you'd become. The man I know you are. Clara's hand moved to his face, and even with Ayana in her lap and security guards surrounding them, the moment felt intimate, sacred. Don't let him turn you into your father. Don't give him that power. Jin closed his eyes, taking a deep breath, then nodded. For you. Only for you. Terrence Williams was arrested that night. With Jin's resources and connections, the DA had an airtight case built within 24 hours. Attempted kidnapping, assault, stalking, violation of a restraining order, conspiracy to commit a felony. Additional charges kept appearing as Jin's lawyers dug deeper. Terrence would spend the next 15 years in prison, possibly more if other victims came forward, which Jin's team was quietly encouraging. But the incident had consequences beyond Terrence's fate. 2 days later, Jin's cousin and second-in-command, Min-ho, confronted him in his office overlooking the city. The board is talking, Min-ho said without preamble, closing the door behind him. About you and Clara. About how you're making decisions based on personal feelings rather than business logic. Her name is Clara, and my personal life isn't the board's concern. Jin's voice was cold. It becomes their concern when you mobilize company security resources for personal matters. When you cancel important meetings to deal with domestic issues. When you're distracted during negotiations because you're worried about a woman. Min-ho's frustration was evident. They're questioning whether you're fit to lead. Jin's eyes went dangerous. Are you questioning whether I'm fit to lead? I'm questioning your judgment. Min-ho ran a hand through his hair. This woman, she's changed you. Made you soft. What happens when our competitors realize you have a weakness they can exploit? When they figure out they can get to you through her and that little girl? Then I'll destroy them like I've destroyed everyone else who's tried to take what's mine. Jin's voice was deadly calm. Listen to yourself. You sound like you're ready to go to war over a woman who was cleaning your house a few months ago. Min-ho leaned forward, urgent. She's not one of us, Jin. She doesn't understand this world, the dangers, the sacrifices required. And that child makes you an even bigger target. Careful, cousin. Jin stood, his full height and presence filling the room. Be very careful about what you say next. I'm trying to protect you. To protect everything we've built. Your father would never have if you finish that sentence. We're done. Jin's voice dropped to a whisper. My father was a monster who murdered my mother with his fists. If you're using him as any kind of example for how I should live my life, then you understand nothing about me. The office fell silent. Min-ho's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. Clara and Ayana are under my protection, and they will remain so. Jin continued, his tone leaving no room for argument. Anyone who has a problem with that can leave. That includes you, cousin. That includes the entire board. I'll burn this company to the ground before I let anyone hurt them. Do we understand each other? Min-ho stared at him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I hope you know what you're doing. Do I? But I'm doing it anyway. 8 months later, everything had transformed. Clara no longer just managed Jin's personal investments. She'd become his business partner, offering perspectives and insights that had increased their portfolio value by 40%. She'd earned the respect of even the most skeptical board members, not through Jin's influence, but through sheer competence and vision. Ayana thrived in her new school, taking taekwondo lessons that Jin insisted on personally supervising. He was surprisingly patient with her, never raising his voice, always encouraging. She'd started calling him Uncle Jin, and the first time she'd done it, he'd gone very still, then smiled in a way Clara had never seen before. On a quiet Sunday afternoon in autumn, the three of them were at the park near their home. Leaves painted the ground in shades of gold and crimson. Ayana was on the swings, pumping her legs with determination, her laughter ringing across the playground. She's fearless, Jin observed, watching her with something like wonder in his expression. She gets that from you, Clara said, leaning into his side. You taught her it's okay to be strong. That she doesn't have to make herself small to make others comfortable. That's a gift, Jin. Jin was quiet for a moment, then reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Clara's heart stopped, her breath catching in her throat. I know this is fast. Jin turned to face her fully, and his hands were actually shaking slightly. I know we've been through hell to get here. I know my world is dangerous and complicated and probably not what you imagined for yourself when you were getting your degree and planning your future. He opened the box, revealing a ring that was somehow both elegant and understated, a diamond that caught the autumn light and threw rainbows. But I also know that I've never felt more human than I do when I'm with you and Ayana. You make me want to be the man my mother hoped I'd become. You make me believe I can be that man. Jin's voice dropped, vulnerable and honest. Clara Davis, will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving that good things can come from darkness? Tears streamed down Clara's face, her hand pressed to her chest. Yes, she whispered, then louder, stronger. 1,000 times yes. 1,000,000 times yes. He slid the ring onto her finger with trembling hands, and when he kissed her, Ayana's delighted shriek carried across the playground. Auntie Clara's getting married. Uncle Jin is going to be my uncle for real. Can I be a flower girl? Can I? Please say I can be a flower girl. They laughed, pulling Ayana into their embrace, the three of them forming a unit that 8 months ago would have seemed impossible. A Korean tech mogul, an African-American woman who'd survived abuse, and a little girl who'd lost her mother but found a family. If you've been enjoying this story, please hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what you think. Your engagement helps this channel grow and brings these stories to more people who need to hear them. That night, after Ayana was asleep, Clara and Jin sat on the balcony of the penthouse they now shared, the city lights stretching out below them like stars brought to earth. "Are you scared?" Jin asked, his arm around her shoulders. Terrified, Clara admitted. "But not of you. Never of you. I'm scared I'll wake up and this will all be a dream. That I'll be back in that old apartment, afraid and alone, believing that's all I deserve. You're never going to be alone again. That's my promise to you, Clara." Jin pulled her closer. "Every single day, for the rest of our lives, I'm going to make sure you know you're safe, you're valued, you're loved. You've already kept so many promises." She turned to look at him, this man who'd become her protector, her partner, her future. "Then what's one more?" Jin smiled, that rare genuine smile that transformed his face. "I love you, Clara Davis. Soon to be Clara Park. I love you, Jin Park." Clara rested her head on his shoulder, watching the city breathe below them. "Thank you for seeing me. For saving me. For showing me what love is supposed to look like. Thank you for letting me be the man I wanted to be but didn't know how. For showing me that strength isn't about control or fear. It's about protecting what matters." They stayed there until dawn broke over the city skyline, painting everything in shades of gold and promise. Two people who'd found each other in the darkest circumstances and chosen to build something beautiful from the ashes. Because sometimes the person who seems most untouchable is actually the one who will fight hardest for you. Sometimes love finds you when you've stopped looking for it. Sometimes the best endings come from the worst beginnings. And sometimes, just sometimes, healing looks like a Korean tech mogul teaching a 10-year-old girl taekwondo while her aunt watches with love in her eyes, all of them building a family from broken pieces and brave choices. Thank you so much for watching from Afrokorean Stories this. If you enjoyed it and haven't subscribed yet, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss our next emotional tale. Drop a comment below telling me what part of Clara and Jin's story touched your heart most. I love reading your thoughts and hearing from viewers all around the world. And if this story moved you, please share it with someone who might need to hear it today. See you in the next one.